screen. Amazing. Let's turn this off. Perfect. So welcome to Web3 and the future of real estate. We are from Tokenized Properties. So myself, I'm from Mint Collective, and with West London City Lets, we have been setting up Tokenized Properties. So we're going to tell you everything that it's about, why we've set it up, and what it is that we've been doing. So it's been set up to facilitate the first UK property support the sale of physical land through an NFT. So some of you will know what an NFT is. Some will be like, what the heck is that? And hopefully by the end of this call, you will understand what it is and how we're going to make it happen. So West London City Lets, we've got Idris on the call and as one of the panelists for today. He came to myself and Vinay from Mattereum and said, right, I've got this piece of land. I want to sell it as an NFT. How do we do that? So myself from Mint Collective, the amazing team at Mattereum, and a team of investors have come together and we've launched Tokenized Properties. So it's a brand new sub-agency of West London City Lets that is facilitating this sale. So why have we done this? We've done it because we think that it's time for innovation in the real estate industry. There's so many things that happen that are just so traditional, there's such long processes, and we thought that tokenizing properties and the way that we've done this sale will hopefully innovate. And it's the first time it's been done in the UK. And there's a few case studies of it being done in the US, but we wanted to make it happen in the UK. So these are two of the companies that have had success in the US, Property and Realty. And we can talk a little bit about them a bit later with some of the panelists and the successes that they've had and how they do it, because we've seen it work in other places. So there's no reason why we can't make it work here in the UK. So this is going back to why we are doing this. So tokenizing property and real estate means that the title deeds, the legal rights, and the guarantees are going to be stored in an asset passport on the blockchain. So ultimately, you have all of the data stored somewhere that's decentralized, and everyone has access to that information. So you have the history of ownership. Everything is automated through smart contracts. And that's hopefully going to provide a much secure, a smoother transaction. So in the past, obviously, a lot of you on the call are property developers, some people in Web3 and NFTs. The process can be extremely long. The bureaucracy is insane, the high transaction costs and the solicitor fees. So we're hoping that with these sorts of transactions, it will eliminate or at least reduce all of the weight that comes with that and make real estate a lot more smoother. And as I said, it's the first time that it's been done. So we've had a team of people working for weeks and weeks. The guys at Mattereum have done an amazing job with the legal team, putting this together, figuring out how we can actually make it work. So there's been a heck of a lot of work has gone into this to make this sale possible. And now that that's been done, it kind of sets the mark of how we do it again. And we'll hopefully make it smoother and smoother each time. And we're building that model. So what you've got is NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. They live on the blockchain. And ultimately, that's a smart contract. Now, a lot of you may have heard of NFT as artwork, whereby someone buys a JPEG. They buy it, they own that JPEG, they can sell it again. So in theory, that's what we've done. We've got a digital piece of artwork and we've tied that to the smart contract, which is tied to the asset passport, which is linked to the physical land asset. So you have two assets in play with each other that can both exist separately. So someone can buy the NFT separate to the land sale and it still have the same value because it's an NFT and because it's got the digital artwork. And we've paired it with the physical land asset. So just a little bit of statistics about people that don't really know the NFT industry. So at the moment, it's been predicted that by 2027, it will reach 13.6 billion. So it's a rapidly growing industry and people are really getting into it and it's super innovative and quite exciting. Physical land asset is obviously an incredibly valuable asset to own, as most of you will know that buy property. At the start of the year, land values went up by 1.4%, and in the first 3 months. So both are assets that will increase in value. So I'm sure Vinny's going to tell you a lot more about Mattereum later on in the call. But basically, and Vinny, you'll do a much better job than me, the Mattereum Asset Passport allows for secure digital documentation of the warranties, which is certified by a team of solicitors. It's easily to transfer and it's extremely secure. So it's basically an electronically signed and recorded blockchain contract. So we can go into way more detail about this and it will hopefully start to make a little bit more sense, because I'm sure that there's a lot of terminology here that people may have not heard before. And that's why we've got on this call to unpick. So in terms of how it actually works, I think this is quite crucial for me to go through these steps as to how people can actually purchase this NFT that is linked to the land. And this will also explain the route that we've taken. So first of all, the NFT land plot is listed on the blockchain. The buyer would go onto the NFT marketplace, which is in this case OpenSea. It's the most widely used marketplace with NFTs. The buyer creates a crypto wallet and then transfers fiat into crypto, or potentially they already have crypto that they transfer into the one that we're using. You then put a bid on the NFT, and the highest bidder then goes through the KYC and AML process. So we need to check that whoever's buying it has proof of address, proof of earnings, that we know where that money is coming from, and that we're complying with HMRC. So if that process is then approved, the NFT is transferred into the buyer's wallet. And at that point, the NFT grants the option of the £1 token payment to actually transfer the legal title. So you have an option there. You either have that option and you buy into it and you're looking for £1, or you choose not to. And if you choose not to, then you can trade that NFT, but under the knowledge that whoever buys it after you has to go through the same KYC AML process. If you choose to lock in with an extra £1, then at that point, our legal certifier will go through the process and the land ownership will become yours. So you're buying that option to lock into the land sale. And if you don't do that and you choose to hold the NFT, you can hold it for up to 5 years, but then at 5 years, you have to take the legal ownership. So these are steps that we've been working on for weeks, and it's been a big team of us going around going, what makes the most sense? And how do we do this so that it's smooth, so that it complies with everything that we've got to comply with? And this is the smoothest way that we've come up with. So you've basically got the two options. Either you hold the NFT you can trade, or you lock into the actual title deeds with the £1. So we thought, yeah, it's really important just to reiterate this point, which is that with the NFT, you are granted the possession of the option to transfer the full legal title into your name for the additional payment of £1. So what is the land? Where is it? Why are we selling it? It's a beautiful piece of land. It's sea-facing plot in Milford-on-Sea in Lymington in Hampshire. So we've actually had these renders done just to give buyers an example of what might be possible with the land. So it has no planning permission, but as you can see, there's got really good opportunity for potential these pods, a nice cafe, an artist studio. If you don't know Lymington-on-Sea or Hampshire, so it's 30-minute drive from Southampton, 2 hours from London, lots of shops, restaurants, pubs, great for sailing, great for water sports. The land itself is freehold and it's on the edge of New Forest. It's got views across the Isle of Wight and it's already placed within this thriving community. The actual size is 2,680 square meters, so it's 0.66 acres. And as I said before, it's sold without planning permission and you automate your own investigations. And then some of the renders, and anyone that wants to have this deck afterwards, I can send this to them. So the NFT is now available to buy. We launched it yesterday, which I think is an amazing achievement for West London City Lets and Tokenized properties. We've managed to do it. It's taken us weeks. It's now online and available for people to bid. As I said, buyers will have to go through AML and KYC. And if you want to trade, you can trade for up to 5 years. And again, it's just the reiteration of the £1 to lock into the legal title. So I'm really pleased that we've got to this point, and that's what this whole event is about. It's sort of celebrating that progression. It's the first time it's been done in the UK. We've managed to get it up and online, and people can actually bid, which is brilliant. And then just to go into our fantastic speakers that we've got, I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves, because they're going to introduce themselves and what they've done much better than I will. But before we start, I'm super, super excited to have all these incredible people on the call. And I'm sure that they've got a lot of value and a lot of knowledge to bring. So Vinay, do you want to go for it and give a little introduction?
Sure. So Vinay Gupta, CEO of Mattereum, was the project manager for the Ethereum launch back in 2015. And we've been working since 2017 on bringing down the legal and technical barriers to trading real assets on the blockchain. And we've worked in collectibles, fine art, gold bullion, and now real estate. This is our first live real estate project. I'm very happy to be here and ready to answer all of your questions about how this all works.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vinay. Idris? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Hi there. So my name is Idris Anjary, and I'm the director of West London CityLets. West London CityLets is a planning consultancy company. We've been working with developers and architects for the past 15 years. And we've created tokenized properties with the Mint Collective and Mattereum to facilitate the tokenization of the property. And hopefully, we're very happy to be working with the Mattereum and Mint. They've been fantastic in done a great job so far. Basically, that's about me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thanks, Idris. And then Dimitrios, do you want to give us a little intro?
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Dimitrios. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Currently, I'm a founder of a new project, still in stealth. I've got over 6 years of experience in building companies in the Proptech and AI space, and more than 10 years of experience developing software, first as an engineer in ARM, and then as a founder in many startups. In my previous project, I was building AI for institutional real estate investors to help them analyze and connect data from disparate sources and to enable them to make better investment decisions. And most recently, I've started 2 tokenized sort of real estate projects on Algorand and Polygon chains, and most recently also won a prize at a Polygon hackathon. So I'm here to answer any sort of like technical questions around blockchain, smart contracts, and PropTech as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dimitrios. Rebecca?
Hi guys, Becks here. How you doing? I am founder and CEO of Nifty World NFT. So I am an educator in the NFT space, but also a consultant for successfully transitioning Web 2 businesses, so traditional businesses, into the Web 3 space. So I'm here to kind of help answer any questions that you have, to help sort of simplify things, make things a little bit more digestible for you, for your business as well. And happy to help. So good to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Becks. Andrew?
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Andrew Stanton. We've got a company called Proptech-PR, but we're not a PR agency. We're a consultancy for PropTech founders. I've now met about 700 of them globally, about 300 in the UK. We've had 93 clients, 8 of them have exited, and we deal with everything. So every technology and every part of the building a property, planning it, selling it, leasing it, or managing it. So it's a space that we know really well. I've been doing it for 6 years, and before that I was an agent for 32 years. So I'm an old man who used to do property in a very old way, and since 2017 I've been doing it the new way. And it's been very successful because I understand how old men, and there are lots of them who are the gatekeepers, see the world, and I say, well, actually, that isn't how it now is. It's like this. So I'm kind of a bridge between the two. Big advocate for digital transformation of real estate, and yeah, it's really enjoyable. And I think what you're doing today or this evening again just moves it forward. It starts a debate, gets people thinking about it. And yes, there's problems, but there's problems with all emergent new technologies. But at the end of the day, people want to do things quickly, and this allows people to do things quickly. Obviously, there's got to be safeguards and all the rest of it, but I'm sure everyone's going to discuss that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. Oyin?
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Adebayo. I am the CEO and founder of a group of companies called Niyo Group. One of the brands that we're building within Niyo Group is called Niyo DApp, which is a blockchain platform that rewards content creators with NFTs. So we're trying to replace the current socials of today and actually adding value to every contributor of social. So on the DApp, people will be able to see content, try the content on, mint it like an NFT, and get raw products. We've won lots of prizes and hackathons. We won some prizes at ETH Amsterdam, at ETH Denver, and also currently building our DApp on Niyo blockchain. So happy to answer any questions about fractional NFTs, anything to do with NFTs, and also having fractions of maybe property and also an NFT. So yeah, lovely to be here.
Amazing, thank you so much. So I'm Hannah, so I am CEO of Mint Collective. So we're an NFT agency and Web3 agency. We basically help brands transition from Web2 into Web3, which is what we've been doing with West London City Let's developing tokenized properties. So let's go straight into the questions. I presume that there's quite a few people on the call that don't necessarily know that much about Web3 and about the NFT space. Could you, Oyin, would you like to give us an overview of what Web3 actually is and the differences between Web3, Web2, and Web1 as an introduction?
Lovely. So Web 1 was essentially like the era where we read. So you would probably all remember the era where we had floppy disks and we had, just boring kind of like Microsoft Word documents where we just could also process information. In Web 2, we read and write and we process information. So that's where data is actually very much cumbersome, and it's a lot. So in the Web 2 space, everything is still pretty much centralized, and our data is stored on the cloud and is centralized within organizations. Now, in the Web3 space, things are a lot more decentralized. And what that basically means is instead of your information or your your value or your power is placed in one central ecosystem or central organization, now we're actually able to see it on the blockchain. So Web3, I would explain Web3 as read, write, value. So value is a lot, is shared across the ecosystem a lot fairer, and it's a lot more visible. So yeah, those are the differences to Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3.
Amazing. Dimitrios, do you want to jump in with your knowledge of blockchain and what it means, how that works with blockchain?
Sorry, Hannah, can you repeat that again, please?
Yeah, just saying that about how the connection between Web3 and blockchain and how NFTs exist on the blockchain and how that actually works and play with each other.
Yeah, I guess the Web3, is a term that sort of includes a lot of different technologies there, and it means a different thing for different people. So it includes things like the metaverse, for example. It includes NFTs and so on. And blockchain is one of those technologies where basically is the enabler of everything around the Web3 space. As an example of that is, for example, smart contracts, right? So where automation for the first time can become possible, automation of processes, automation of transactions, and so on. So for me personally, what Web3 is about an ownership economy. So the users now, for the first time in the Web3 space, they become owners of their data, and they become also participants in the in this sort of like in this process, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's amazing to watch companies transition from Web 2 into Web 3 and develop using all these new technologies to enhance their business and enhance the models that they're working on. Becks, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've seen companies transition from Web 2 into Web 3? What the value is of making that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what I've seen, you know, the way I started in the Web3 space was actually working with creators. So we all know that kind of this space has traditionally been associated with art and artists and people creating everything from JPEGs to actual art and creating essentially an ongoing economy for themselves. And this can happen within businesses as well. But the bigger opportunity beyond the initial kind of sales of NFTs and things that you can add as part of your offering is the opportunity to build and expand your community and your fan base. And by building on that, you'll be able to offer them a level of value and loyalty, which is something that we haven't been able to see in the Web 2 space. So the way that you can engage with your customers is going to be absolutely beyond anything we've ever been able to do in Web 2. The way that you can return on investments in the Web 3 space, again, is going to be adding that exceptional value to your customers as well in a continual form that will go, you know, which will hopefully provide the loyalty from these customers that see that value for years and years and years to come. So there's a lot of longevity that Web3 and ownership and decentralization can actually really provide businesses within this space beyond what we've seen before.
Sure, absolutely. And Vinay, obviously you ex Ethereum, that's obviously a massive game changer now with Mattereum. Do you want to talk a little bit about the value in Web3 and value in having blockchain exist the way that it does and the way that we're utilizing it?
Sure. So, you know, it's kind of an invisible revolution. You know, you sort of think like, you know, why does it matter if you can essentially move money as easily as sending an email? Well, you know, what does it matter if you can change ownership of intellectual property as easily as sending an email? Okay, that's interesting. You know, what happens if you could transfer ownership of real estate as easily as sending a referral? Okay, that's really kind of turning into something. You know, you kind of have that kind of double beat pause, and it's like, wait, what? And you know, Web3 sort of exists in a little bit of a vacuum right now. It's in a little bit of a bubble. You know, you sort of have Web3 stuff and real world stuff, and we're only in really the first year of serious bridging of those two worlds. But when that opens up, you know, I mean, for anybody that's bought a house the old-fashioned way, the idea of you just send the money in one direction and you become immediately the owner of the property, done, signed, sealed, delivered, all the liabilities managed, all the paperwork is already computed. You know, after 5 years of that, nobody is ever going to go back to doing it the old way. It's going to look like typing letters on typewriters and then mailing them on a pigeon. And we don't notice the stuff that's gone, right? I mean, you know, fax machines, right? Wired telephones, you know, just generational shifts in technology. It's not that you look at the new stuff and go, oh my God, it's so amazing. It's just that the old stuff seems completely ridiculous and you would never touch it again if you know, even if somebody paid you. And that is what is going to happen to most of the existing ways of moving property around in the world as this Web3 stuff really bites. It just all shifts onto the new platforms and the old ways become ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It's so fascinating watching all these platforms like Mattereum, like all the different companies that you guys are working on, watching that transfer. It's fascinating, and how quickly it's happening and how quickly people are adapting to it and will adapt to it. And this is just one of the things, this educational piece that people need to know about before they can feel secure. Dimitrios, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience in Web3 with PropTech and how you've seen that transition, and any sort of case studies and things that you've worked on that show that transition from Web 2 into Web 3 specifically with property?
So in terms of this transition, I think it's still a very slow process. First thing I need to say that a lot of real estate, they have not even transitioned to Web 2, let alone transitioning to Web 3 at the moment. And but I think the revolution is happening quite fast, because it's the same way that it happened all of a sudden, I think, in finance, and now it has become a massive, massive industry. And in real estate, there are so many benefits, first of all, about tokenization, right? So, and I think there are two ways to look at this. First of all, you look all these sort of equivalents, like traditional finance equivalents, like real estate investment trust, for example. And there are so much behind in terms of the benefits. So, for example, the REITs have promised to democratize access to real estate, but they have spectacularly failed to do so, right? So we've seen cases where up to 30% of the rental income of REITs, they might be going to the pockets of investment managers. And for many people, especially a lot of younger people these days, this is completely unacceptable, right? So this is something that Web3 space can completely change. So it's been quite of a slow process so far, but we've seen a lot of younger people now. They want to have direct access to real estate by owning tokens, so tokenized properties, and this has been happening for the ages between, I would say, you know, from like very young people, like teenagers, to the early sort of like 20s. People are adopting this kind of technologies really, really fast. So this kind of creates a lot of demand from the buy side, right, for projects like this. And in my experience, I think this is where change will happen. A lot of younger people will, for the first time, will be able to own real estate. When before that, they were never hoping to own real estate. In fact, what I've seen is about 2 out of 10 people today say they will never be able to own real estate, right? So by tokenizing properties and offering this to people, we are opening up to a completely new market for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're saying, there's so many people that are in the Web3, in the crypto world, in NFTs, that want to own these assets, and it makes it so much easier to own these assets if it's just one simple transaction. One simple transaction, they get their asset passport, they know what their asset is, and they have that value in their wallet. It's so much easier. Andrew, do you want to give us a little bit of your knowledge with working with various PropTech companies? Anything specific that you've seen that is similar to this that has worked? I know that you know Proppy and Realty and those guys we've spoken about. Yeah, give us a little bit of your knowledge on these companies and the way the transactions.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd like to say a few things. Vinay made the point about the fax. Fax was invented in 1934. Lots of solicitors, unfortunately, are still using them. You know, and that's your problem. You got the Law Act of what was it? I think Land Act 1924, and we're in 2022, almost a century on. So what I see is that I am encouraged by the younger people. They're going to sort everything, and they're going to code it all out, and that will transform our world. But just around property, you've got lenders, solicitors, agents, and obviously the people doing the transaction. But your lenders and your solicitors are tremendously risk averse, and also these industries are massively around bits of paper, and you know, that in itself is causing the barriers. Kind of what's happening is, and what we see, I mean, I see founders typically they're 38 to 41, and they are solving a fundamental problem, or so they feel. And I think the great thing with how you explained everything brilliantly, Hannah, was, God, that's complex. And I often get a founder who will pitch me, this is what I'm doing, Andrew, and I go, fine, can you define that in 7 words? Because if you can, that's great. Then everyone understands it, trusts it, because it's always this trust, and it's always this, that's the push really to adoption, is trust. But I think Dimitrios is absolutely right. The young people want stuff done really, really quickly through the prism of their mobile phone. Click, I want it done now. And cannot understand. I mean, I was an agent in '88, and we were doing property sales in 12 weeks to completion. Now it's 24 weeks. And in '88, there was 2 million completions in 1 year. And now it's about 1.2 million. So we've got all this technology. We've moved away from, lots of things, but it's still a cottage industry. That's the problem. And I think this is the big opportunity. You've got a cottage industry where agents, you've got 18,500 agents. And most of them are like 1 or 2 branches. And you've got 4,000 conveyancers. And they also are not heavily tech. They haven't got the money to do it. But my hope is that, people are going to come along with a big solution and everyone will jump on board. And I think Vinay is absolutely right. They won't look back. They'll go, well, why are we ever doing it that way? But there are a lot. I mean, we deal with the government. We deal with so many different gatekeepers. And they have these positions of power and they don't really understand it. And I think, Hannah, if you gave your explanation like you did today, they go, sounds a bit like science fiction to me. Whereas younger people, and this is the whole thing, younger people get it. And they get this concept. Yeah.
Can I show you something mind-blowing? I think you're going to love this.
Okay.
So this is a quote from Sir Geoffrey Voss, the Master of the Rolls, who is the most senior civil judge in the UK, master of the entire UK judicial system for things like real estate transactions.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read this for a second. The blockchain is now at a stage in its development equivalent to where the internet was in or around 1995. The internet was unstoppable in 1995, and blockchain technology is unstoppable now. It will become ubiquitous in all major industrial and financial sectors simply because it allows for the immutable recording of data, thereby reducing friction, commercial and consumer transactions, and obliterating the scope for dispute as to what has occurred. So, we are in a position where there is a kind of middle band, which is very slow to move, the bureaucracy, the administration, the kind of handle-turning parts of the process. But I think uniquely of anywhere in the world, and I've been blown away by seeing this over the last few years, the English judiciary from the very top level have locked onto blockchain as a mechanism for recording what happens in transactions in a way that is going to completely change the way that disputes that they're asked to preside over occur. So I think that we're in a position where, we do have this phenomenal top-down support in the UK from the judiciary. And at that point, it becomes much easier to move the solicitors and the conveyancers and everybody else onto the new technology, because if the people that run the UK legal system say this technology is great and everything is going this way, it makes it much easier to make the case for everybody else to come along and say, right, look, you've got the guidance from the Master of the Rolls, you've got the guidance from the judiciary, come on in, get onto the trend, you know that this thing has the support of the courts, and at that point, you're not taking a risk from using it, you're leaving behind the risks of outmoded technology and moving on to something that you can actually trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit more jaded, having spent 6 years in lots of meetings with lots of solicitors. My viewpoint is it's a generational thing. When the owners, when the directors are the 20-year-olds now, yes, but people who are 50 have been doing it in a certain way for so long, and unfortunately, they are the people who are making decisions about what they are doing. So I'm hopeful, but I'm kind of thinking it's going to take longer than it should, because adoption is just so difficult. And I am aware that there are some senior people. I mean, I deal with some very big legal tech companies. But they are the exception, and they're trying to get out ahead of everyone else. But most solicitors don't even use modern technology to run their offices, which is a real problem, which exacerbates everything. But sorry, I digress. Let's go back to.
That's all right.
Are there people out there
do you want to
great...
jump in with your comments and notes?
Yeah, so I just want to kind of address what some people might be thinking, which is kind of erring on the side of caution with all of this. It's fantastic that we have the judiciary and and the justice system kind of going behind it, but what a lot of people are seeing within this space are the headlines around Ponzi schemes, loss of assets, things like that, how they don't know, certain people don't know how to protect their assets. And it still is, because it's an unregulated space, particularly the NFT space, it is the digital wild, wild west, right? Yeah. So education from a very low level of understanding to break things down, to make things super simple for people who aren't technical to understand this is going to be absolutely key for anyone that's wanting to step into this space and, you know, and progress within Web3. And we can't jump ahead on that because things are changing rapidly in this space, and to stay on top of it, even for, I suppose, the panelists here, I think you'll all agree, it takes a lot of time to kind of be like, oh, this has happened now and this is changing, let alone someone that's in a completely different industry. So, you know, we have a challenge that needs to be addressed, which is how do we make sure that this is an authentic, trustworthy space within this particular industry? And therefore, like, who is it that we can turn to for those kind of advice? And, you know, how can you tell the education around what a JPEG might do for you and what the situation is, you know, with OpenSea having certain scams happening, etc., when you're buying your NFTs versus, you know, someone who's actually wanting to use this technology to buy a particular property, because that in that respect, it's a huge amount of money that people will be investing in. So I just wanted to kind of throw it out there, as much as we're talking about the positives of this, is that we have to address those concerns that a lot of people who are new to this space that might be listening in will also need to kind of take into consideration as well.
Absolutely.
Anna, can we just, I know it's probably not protocol, but Dharmesh Mystery, perhaps, because he'll have quite a considered opinion about this, which I think might be useful.
Say that again, sorry, Andrew.
Dharmesh Mystery, perhaps he's got his little hand up. He would like to say something, and he's. Do
you want to? Yeah, do you want to go for it? Where are you? There we go. Ask to unmute. I'm asking. Oh yeah.
Hi. I, like Andrew, am quite old, and I was involved in launching some of the very first banks in the internet in 96, 97. We launched the first insurance company online as well. The thing with that is that, you know, whilst we create the innovation, the actual adoption, like 50% of customers using internet banking, 22 years, 50% of mobile banking customers, 15 years. So adoption is pretty slow. And you know, I think whilst there, this narrow bit of transfer of value can be solved today and demonstrated today, the actual property chain itself is really complex, and it involves things that aren't just automated really well at all. Like, you know, getting a search out of some local authorities is literally going to take 3 months. In others, it might take 3 weeks because they have it on a database, right? So you know, I'm all for the new technology, etc., but there's some real world problems and challenges that this technology doesn't solve, right? Because actually, well, okay, things like legislation.
No technology solves broken bureaucracy, right? I mean, you know, if the government records are in terrible condition, as you might get in, say, developing world countries, you can't just inject technology into that and make it work. But you know, I want to challenge your notion that 50% over 20 years is slow adoption. You know, real estate globally is, you know, what, a $330 trillion asset class. So if we saw half of $330 trillion move on to smart contract platforms for transfer over the next, say, even 25 years, I would call that one of the largest transfers in terms of the record of keeping and management of capital imaginable. You know, I mean, real estate is so enormous that even if you only see 0.5% of global real estate transactions move onto the blockchain, that's more business than Bitcoin has done in its entire history. You know, it's such a massive space that even if only the most aggressive companies that are furthest looking forward and most enthusiastic about rapid transfer, if those are the only people that come on board, and that's 0.5% of the market over the next, say, 2 or 3 years, we would still all be swamped for business. You know, we couldn't hire fast enough to keep up with that because real estate is so enormous. Even small movements are huge business streams.
The problem is that we think that some industries are slow to move, but government is even slower to move. And they're the ones that have to shift the title deeds, right? There's no amount of technology that's going to change them necessarily.
Yeah, sure. But, I mean, that's why you use SPVs for all of this stuff, right? Nobody's suggesting that the land registry gets itself a blockchain and works that way. The only practical way of doing anything with real estate that is innovative is to wrap everything in SPVs before you start, because that's what produces the buffer between the world of the new technology and the archaic world of the land registry. You need the
What's
SPV
an
in the middle.
SPV? Sorry.
Special purpose vehicle. So a corporation that owns the real estate, and it could own either a single piece of real estate, or you could have something that was almost REIT-shaped that could hold a bunch of different real estate. So that company holds the title in the government register, and then itself maintains a register of interest in terms of who owns which bits of which properties. And that mechanism is already very, very commonly used for enabling all kinds of interesting operations on real estate. It's how a lot of very high value property is already transferred. You move it into an SPV. When you want to transfer ownership of the real estate, you change ownership of the company. So the land registry continues to say the company owns the property, but the ultimate beneficial owner of the company changes. In the blockchain instance, you tend not to move the ultimate beneficial owner of the company. You tend to move an interest in the property using contract law. But at no point are you expecting the land registry to suddenly magically decide that this thing that happened in the blockchain is anything to do with them. That's why in the middle you have the layer of clever lawyers and well-written contracts and properly designed transfer mechanisms. You need a layer of people with like doing real work in the middle to make it work. But that layer of people doing real work in the middle, that's what produced Big Bang in the 80s for stock trading. It was just a bunch of people very diligently working out how all this stuff could be modernized. And they built the case and built the case and built the case and built the case. And then the government caught up. And at that point, City of London trading was changed forever. It'll be similar with real estate. You'll get very, very diligent companies will prove it works. They'll get gradually larger, more of the market. Then you'll get to a critical point where the government is just like, okay, look, this paper thing is too expensive to maintain. We have to modernize it, and they'll throw the switch. Very much as the Dutch government did with their land register, maybe over the last 10 years.
Do you want to, Vinny, just on that, do you want to maybe, I know we touched about the asset passport. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and how it actually ties into the physical land asset so people understand that a little bit better?
Sure. So I want to say here that this is the first real estate transaction that we've done on this method. So as a result, everything has been done in the most laborious, diligent, precise way that we could figure out, right? We haven't optimized the process to try and make it more efficient. We haven't tweaked it to try and get it to run better. We haven't templated it. The entire thing has been done with lots of very skilled labor from lawyers, from both parties in the transaction, making sure that everything is exactly the way it ought to be. As you went on and you did this at scale, you might get more use of templates, you get more use of kind of sort of normal, like standardization of contract and so on. So the core principle that we operate on is this. You cannot transfer the title of the property on the blockchain in a way that the government will recognize, but you can execute contracts which a court will recognize on the blockchain. So because we've had legislation verifying that digital signatures are signatures, and because we've got plenty of evidence that when somebody makes a payment using something like USDC, the intention is there to transfer value of a kind that a court can recognize, there's no ambiguity that it's possible for two parties to execute a contract using the blockchain to both offer the terms and also to accept the payment and to provide verification the payment's been accepted. Does that all make sense so far? Because I want us to start with a clear understanding of the kind of legalistic machinery of getting contracts exchanged on chain. Any questions about that before we get into how we do it?
Let's see if there's any questions.
Okay, good enough. So, okay, we got one. Go on.
No, I think it's Oyin was going to speak after you,
okay.
Vinny, but don't.
All right. So once we've got this concept that you can do an exchange, you can execute contracts on chain, you then have a set of contracts which are executed when somebody buys the NFT. And those contracts basically fall into two categories. One of them is an option contract to transfer the ownership of the real estate using the conventional mechanisms executed by the SPV. So the SPV basically issues an option contract, you buy the option, somebody else buys the option off you, somebody else buys the option off you. Eventually you get to the point where somebody executes the option, and at that point conventional transfer of the real estate title occurs, right? However, we also need a set of guaranteeable information provided by the people selling the real estate that will be used by each one of the people that transfer to the NFT to figure out exactly what it is that they own when they buy the NFT. And that set of information is carried as a set of legal warranties, which promise certain information about the property is true. And if that information is not true, it becomes possible to claim on those warranties to recover the value that has been lost. And those two mechanisms together, the option mechanism and the warranty mechanism, produce a very, very tight legal container, which enables the transfer of the property on the existing English legal framework without any ambiguity that causes your lawyers to become uncomfortable and wrinkle their noses. And in effect, each buyer of the NFT immediately takes ownership of the property. It isn't updated on the land registry, but they have a clear contractual obligation, which they can then get discharged by executing the update on the land registry.
And also, yeah, absolutely. And also, it's probably worth mentioning that that asset passport is public. Correct?
Oh yeah, you can look at it
public,
right now.
It's for people to view. Oyin, do you want to jump in and add what you were going to add? Sorry, we're getting around.
No, absolutely. I was just going to speak about the security, just off the back of some of the things that Becks was speaking about when it comes to the NFT space. I think that one of the things that I do recognize as like a risk a lot for a lot of people that want to invest in the NFT space, although I do understand that it is actually such an awesome solution that we can have right now, especially in developing countries. I mean, I'm Nigerian of origin. And in Nigeria, one of the massive problems that we have is actually the verification of your certificate to show that you own this land, and actually having tokenized property and having NFTs in those spaces is going to be such a game changer, and it actually helps to secure your assets. But also we have to realize that there's also security issues when it comes to this. And actually what will be interesting to understand, to find out, is to see how, if there's anyone working on any solutions to increase security. That's number one. I think the second thing I wanted to contribute, I know that a few people have spoken about government. I'm actually going to be speaking with the Financial Conduct Authority as well as DRCF in a few weeks about how can government actually adopt these new technologies. So it's something that's already happening. It's just about how fast it can be deployed. So the situation of 1996 might not be the same situation today, because actually people are wanting to have value quicker for whatever they have to contribute to the ecosystem.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's super, super important points. And like you say, there's all these teething problems which is why Mattereum that have been so due diligent on all of these things, and it's been so much work getting to this point. Idris, do you want to talk a little bit about why you decided to initially reach out and get in touch with us, and why you wanted to have this asset as an NFT and tokenize the asset? And what were the problems that you were seeing initially with traditional property sales, and why this might be innovative?
Of course. Yeah, so basically the idea was to sell the property as an NFT, which is a novel way, a new way of selling rather than the traditional. And, we had a meeting with our investors to educate them that, this is what an NFT is, what the blockchain is. And it took them some time to understand, but they thought that this was a very good way. Some of our investors, developers, have a portfolio of properties, and they thought that, this is something which will break the normal tradition of selling properties, of how it is at the moment. The main thing that we're doing actually is streamlining the process by doing the due diligence first before the handshake, rather than usually in the traditional sense, you do the handshake and then you do the due diligence, you do the searches, you do, solicitors get involved, all of that. This, what we've done is we've gone in another direction, in the sense that we've done everything first. And when the handshake occurs, basically the transaction happens instantly. What the comments were just now. I think I just wanted to address some of that. That the traditional sense, I think Andrew answered a lot of the what the traditional problems are at the moment. And the question was raised that land registry and all of that this takes months. But usually, if the option is there for the £1 transaction to happen and the option to gain the legal title is there, what happens traditionally is you send in the TR1, which is the document you send to land registry, and then they can take 3 months or 4 months, whatever it is. But once your solicitor send your TR1, basically you are the owner of the property, because the solicitors have verified that. You can sell the property even if you don't have the land registry. You can sell the property, you can put a planning permission on it, you can pretty much do it, anything you want. So this further, I'm not saying that system is streamlined via the NFT, but that's not the biggest concern that we have. The question is that what is the difference between the traditional and the new NFT method that we're doing? And I think the main thing is the streamlining process. It's the trust, because the trust is where the asset passport comes in. And I think Vinay explained very, very nicely that how important the asset passport is in this whole package that that we've put together. If I consider the time scale that we've started this project as the first, West London City Lets have never done this before. It's taken around 4.5 to 5 months from start to finish, and this is the first time. I think if we were to continue this, we'd actually streamline it even further. Having the templates in place, having all of these structures in place to facilitate further sales. We've already got inquiries up to 7 properties who want to list with us. So people, I think, are cottoning on this new concept. People want to jump onto this bandwagon, and I think this is the main difference, that from the traditional and the new way of the NFTs.
Absolutely, I think it's been really brave of you initially, Idris, to actually take the step and go, do you know what? I'm going to lead the way. I'm going to pioneer this. And going for it and working all of these things out that we've had to work out for the last couple of months in order to make this viable, in order to make this actually happen. It has been a long process, but it's amazing that you took the jump and you actually have done it. So yeah, I'm glad that we've got to this point. Dimitrios,
we had the team at Mattereum have been fantastic. They've got a good legal support team. We have our legal support from our side, and they work together very nicely. And obviously you've done a great job in marketing. So I think if you've got all the right people in place, things become much more simpler.
Absolutely. And Dimitrios, do you want to talk a little bit about other things that you're seeing in Web3 and in tokenization, and what the benefits are with these sorts of transactions moving forward within real estate?
I mean, other trends at the moment, we're seeing around in decentralized sort of like finance, combined with PropTech, I would say, and blockchain. So we're seeing new sort of like lending protocols out there where people can just collateralize perhaps their off-chain assets, which is perhaps like things like real estate, and then they can access on-chain liquidity, so they can access stable coins, which is equivalent to fiat currency. And so we see this kind of new trend now where a lot of new bridges are created between sort of the real world and the sort of like the blockchain world, and this enables sort of new opportunities, I would say. And at the same time, some other trend that we're seeing is a lot of automation in terms of the investment analysis. So we're seeing a lot of analytics and AI in real estate. So before I talked how real estate at the moment, they have not even adopted Web2, for example, right? But for the first time, we're seeing a lot of sort of digitization that is happening, right? Like, for example, even very basic things like floor plans, for example, or even incorporating alternative data in real estate when you're trying to value properties, like demographics, for example, or crime levels and so on. So now for the first time, we can analyze and combine all this real estate, and we can analyze properties at scale, right? And this is super important because now we're moving away from this kind of like relationship-driven model for many real estate investors that has underpinned real estate for decades, towards more of a top-down sort of like strategist model where data plays a crucial role. And now at the same time, blockchain comes in and enables not just all this kind of like investment analysis, but also a lot of the processes to be automated, because a lot of intermediaries, like lawyers, for example, they can be, and not just lawyers, even like clearing houses, for example, because you might have things like real estate investment trusts that you have to go through a broker, you might have to go through a clearing house to clear a transaction and so on. But now blockchain and smart contracts, they create this direct relationship between buyer and seller, right? And this creates huge efficiencies in transactions.
Absolutely. And I've just realized that, so Ian from Mattereum is also on the Zoom, and I know we've been talking about the legalities, but Ian, would you mind jumping on and just talking to us a little bit about the process that you've been through with Mattereum, with West London City Lets, in order to make this happen and the legalities that have gone behind it?
I mean, sure. As Idris has said, it's very much been a group effort. A lot of contact between the legal team at Mattereum and the legal team at West London City Lets to try and put together the sort of combination of the contracts that West London City Lets needs to have in order to put together the asset passport and to put together the warranties and to make sure that the warranties are watertight, legally binding, and so on, and also to work out exactly how this option is going to be exercised. What sort of, for example, stamp duty, land tax ramifications there are, all that sort of thing, and how to streamline the system as much as we possibly can, bearing in mind, yes, all of the obstacles that previous speakers have already talked about. And I think we've got something that should work. We're very happy.
Thank you so much, Ian. Yeah, and all the hard work that's gone behind it has been super appreciative.
I do want to stress here that, like, it's not that often when you do like blockchain tokenization stuff and the lawyers are happy. This is one of the consistent themes, is that Mattereum leaves behind it a trail of happy lawyers, because the stuff that we're doing is kind of diligent and sensible, and you have lawyers working it and they work on it very hard, and then what comes out of it is something that is like sensible standard contract law used in ways that create new kinds of transactions, new kinds of transfers of liability, new ways of making money. And this is not the kind of traditional end run story of like, oh my god, there's all this legal stuff and we're just going to kind of hop around it with software. It's executing sensible normative legal processes using the blockchain to do the payments and the record keeping and the stuff that the blockchain is good at, rather than attempting to kind of create property ex nihilo from the blockchain and then sell it as if it was stuff. It's a different attitude, it's a different approach. And I think part of the confusion that we see when people are like, oh, the blockchain is going to take over real estate, it's like, well, the people that know how to do real estate are going to start using the blockchain. It's not that you can do blockchain in a real estate. It's not that you can do real estate in a blockchain native way. You can't take the legal complexity out, you can't take the liability out, you can't take all the conveyancing steps, all of those processes. You still have to do them, but increasing amounts of the paperwork burden, you can start using these systems to handle record keeping, diligence, all the rest of those processes. Like, it's not a sort of top-down, radical, de novo, look what we've pulled out of our magic hat kind of an approach. It's just layers and layers and layers of grind to make sure that legitimate processes get done using new technology. And it's a very different attitude to most of the rest of the industry. I think blockchain property projects are almost entirely going to wind up with that kind of style and that kind of attitude, because there's just no other way to do it.
And
I think if I might just, I think it's worth mentioning at this point that West London City Let's legal team are definitely not a sort of tech savvy legal team. That very much, it was very important that certain things had to be in place, certain things have to be done to their satisfaction in order for this to proceed, and that's been done. And I think that's very important, that it's not, it's not two sets of sort of tech lawyers. It really is a proper property lawyer from the West London City Let side, combining with the sort of the more tech savvy lawyers in the Mattereum space.
Absolutely.
And that's what it takes, right? I mean, if we're going to get this kind of industry going at scale, if you can't talk to the people and they're perfectly ordinary, sensible, respectable real estate lawyers about how you're going to do the transactions, it can't scale. But if you could convince the lawyers that this works, and not only does it works better than the other ways of doing things, better for them, better for both buyer and seller, that's when the real transition begins.
Do you want to show? I know we briefly looked at it before, Vinny, but just do you want to pull up the asset passport again and just give us a quick overview of how it works and what is actually in there so that people can visualize? I know that you've posted it on the chat. Do you want to?
Sure. I would be very happy to do this. Ian, do please also chime in if there's anything you'd like to add.
I will.
This is very much Ian's baby. Here we go.
Because
Okay.
I think it would be good to have a bit of an overview. Maybe not every single one.
No, we'll give it a quick look over. So here is the NFT. So this is OpenSea, which is the big site for buying and selling NFTs. Something like 90% of the world's NFT traffic goes over it. So here we have a minimum bid of $1.25 million. And inside of the description, it says if you want to know about this, you have to go and look at the Mattereum asset passport, and it will give you a set of guarantees that tell you exactly what you're buying. Right? And then there's a little more information down here where it describes exactly what the NFT is, and that it is an NFT for actual transfer of the property, and it provides a kind of very quick summary of how that works. So when somebody buys this NFT, it's very clear in the description that they are actually executing a set of legal contracts and they're paying a bunch of additional fees, which bind the people that are selling the NFT to a certain set of rules of engagement in the form of some contracts. And there's no ambiguity about that. You have a digital signature on the payment. That is an acceptance of the contract terms you're paying, and then in return, you're receiving these warranty protections. The warranties are for what it is that is being sold. So here's a description of the land and a set of supporting documentation. So we have, for example, the PDF files for the registry entries. Tells you exactly what you're looking at here. And it's just all of the documentary evidence that you would want, plus a set of pictures that give you a nice kind of visual sense of what it is that you're buying. If we scroll down a little more, there are some maps, aerial photography. And so you get a really good, clear sense of what it is that's actually on the table here. And then for the right to rely on that information, you are paying 1% of the value of the transaction. Now, let me explain a little about this mechanism. So if I buy the NFT and then I sell the NFT to Ian, what we don't want is chain litigation. Ian decides that he's going to do something with the land, discovers that there is a problem, the information was inaccurate, somebody's screwed something up. What we don't want is Ian suing me and then me suing the people that provided me with data, right? What we want is for Ian to be able to directly sue the people that provided him with the data. And the avoidance of chain litigation is a fundamental operating principle because chain litigation is awful and unnecessary. But there is a secondary benefit here, which is the data providers are being paid every time the NFT changes hands. So if the NFT changes hands 25 times, the people that are vouching for the information are going to get paid 25 times for these warranties. And so for them, it represents a sensible investment for them to do an excellent job the first time around, because they're going to be earning a residual income from keeping that data, from getting that data right, and in future iterations of the system for keeping that data up to date. So not only an immediate snapshot as it is for this passport, but in future it will be a continuously maintained database. Then let's take a look at the third warranty rather. So third warranty again links out to a set of terms of service, and it describes the function of the $1 transfer agreement where you have an option, and when you execute the option, it triggers transfer of legal title out of the SPV and so on. So this is the sort of framing and the presentation of the warranties. And then if we want to take a look at the contracts, so here we have the warranty agreement. This is the thing which is being executed on chain. So you have paid your money. As a result, you become a counterparty to an instantiation of this contract. And this contract specifies that it's under the UK Jurisdiction Task Force Digital Dispute Resolution rules, which are this very nice set of rules for handling disputes about digital assets, created by the UK Jurisdiction Task Force with a foreword by Sir Geoffrey Ross, who is the master of the rules. So this thing is signed off by basically the most senior relevant legal authority in the UK as being a sensible, grown-up way of approaching things. And Mattereum helped to draft these rules. I think we're the first company in the UK to use these rules to carry customer transactions. So, what we have is a, big, well-structured, heavy legal machinery for moving liability around the system in a sensible way. You always know who is liable. You always know who's holding the football. You always know what facts it is that you're able to rely on. And when the time comes for the transfer, you're executing a perfectly normative transaction. You send your pound in to execute the option, and then the option agreement is executed and the land is transferred, and everybody diligently performs the tasks that they're asked to perform, resulting in a transfer of title occurring. Ian, did I miss anything or fumble any of the detail?
No, I think that sums it up very well.
I think that's super smooth, and you've put that in the chat for people to go and have a look at. People can view that on the NFTs. So the NFT is actually, it's online, it's for sale now. Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about how other companies might adapt to this sort of mechanism? If you think that other property companies will catch on and start doing this, do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, before I do, can we just go to what Dharmesh wants to discuss, because probably will be of use, I feel, and I'll be more than happy to talk about it. I think he's got something that he wants to discuss, if that's okay. So
Dharmesh, yeah, go for it. Sorry, I thought if you got your hand raised, Dharmesh.
His little hand raised.
Sorry, yeah, go for it. Go on. I thought you hadn't put it down. So sorry, go on. Oh, you're on mute. No. There you go.
That's right. Great. Just so that you know, the chat is disabled so that we can't put our details down to share with other people.
Oh, there is actually a sheet that's on there. We will repost it again that people can post into.
Brilliant. Okay.
And then we're going to open up the chat just in a little second for questions.
I guess a question for Vinay or Dimitri. I guess Web3's associated with some, with crypto and stuff as well. And there's a couple of things that, I wonder, how does this solution address like anonymity and proof of funds? So for a property transaction to go through, you have to disclose where you got that money from. You can't say, well, made a bit of money on Ethereum, etc. You've got to show how you funded the acquisition of those tokens, how you actually, made the money in the end. But the other key thing is, how do you prove identity? Are you doing anything different in those spaces? Questions. Really.
I think this is probably one for me. So this is where the whitelist comes in. As Hannah mentioned earlier, when you register your interest in bidding on the property, you give your name, contact email address, and wallet address to Tokenized Properties. Once the auction is over, the highest bidder will then have to go through, basically they will then be contacted to go through a complete KYC AML. So the anonymity, yeah, absolutely. If you are going to buy this NFT, then your right to anonymity is forfeited. You have to go through the KYC AML process. You have to go through proof of funds. This will all be done by West London City Let's legal team. when they are fully satisfied to the requirement, to the requirements of the SRA, effectively that the funds are legit, that the person is legit, they will then contact Mattereum and say this wallet can be whitelisted, and at that point and only at that point can the transaction go ahead.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good to know. I mean, I think, you know, I'm actually a fan of Web3, even though I might not come across it. But, you know, these are kind of questions that we would get asked by the industry, right? And it's important that the answers are like as Andrew said, they have to be crystal clear for the layman to understand.
Yeah, and this was one of the crucial things that as I say, that the not quite so tech savvy legal team at West London City Let's needed to be satisfied about. They needed to be happy that this procedure is again watertight. That the NFT cannot be sold until the KYC AML proof of funds process has been completed.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Thanks so much for your
Thanks,
question.
Andrew.
Becks, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, it was just, I suppose, on the flip side to that question is, you know, we all know who you guys are. But if someone else is, if for mass adoption of this kind of technology and how this is going to work for other companies, is how do you prove if you're selling your NFT that you are who you say you are? I think that is something that needs to be discussed. I think also in terms of speed, I've bought multiple properties, and I wouldn't even go anywhere near starting something without getting a lawyer involved, which is, you know, to read those documents and those warranties. I would miss stuff on those. So I'm not sure. I suppose I need a little bit more convincing, I suppose, into how this will sort of speed up a process without having to still use those traditional services of having to get a solicitor to look at all that stuff for me as well, just to have that reassurance. So just a couple of points that I've just picked up from that conversation.
Yes, I mean, we certainly wouldn't expect somebody to, you know, drop sort of, you know, multiple millions of pounds on an NFT without having a lawyer read the contracts that described exactly what they were buying. Right. I mean, you know, there's just no way that anybody's going to spend that kind of money without getting a lawyer involved.
I appreciate that. It's just more actually, there are people who will make quick decisions and make wrong decisions in this space because the access to it suddenly to make a bid or do anything on OpenSea is actually very, very simple to do once you've set up a crypto wallet. And I just think that that's something that needs to be addressed as well, is that you and I know that we wouldn't do it without a solicitor, but Joe Blogs may fall into that trap if they're not really that sure of what they're doing in this space, other than to go, oh, is my first step to go onto OpenSea and place a bid, and then you get potentially locked into a scenario where you're part of a bidding process, and it's just that side of things that might need clearing up a little bit.
For sure. I think as well with the team that are behind it, we are on constant call for support. So if there is someone that is wanting to put a bid in, but they're also like, well, I don't really understand how this works, how that works, we're happy to go through those processes and talk them through the asset passport, the legals that have gone behind it, and having the face. Like most of the projects that you see with NFTs, you can't actually see who's behind it. You don't know who it is. You don't know who you're talking to. And I guess that was one of the values in doing this event, is an introduction of these are the people, these are the individuals that are behind this actual sale. Let's talk about it. And then also, if anyone has any specific things, they can come to us and we can actually explain face to face, because I think there's a customer service problem with NFTs and with the Web3 space, whereby it's so difficult to get in touch with people and ask them questions. Whereas with this, we have an open conversation, and it's easy just to call the office and ask about it. I guess the problem that people have got to be aware of is making sure that when they go on OpenSea, that it is the right one, that it's linked to the landing page, that we've told everyone to go to the landing page first so that they can go through the initial registering process so that we can contact them afterwards for the KYC and AML. And that's a crucial part of the step. So I don't think we expect anyone to go straight to OpenSea. We want them to go onto the landing page, read about it, get in touch with us, make that connection, and then place a bid if they wish to. But it is really important to have the people behind the projects. I find that that's a massive issue, and this hopefully solves that. Do we want to open it up to any more questions from anyone else that's been listening? Anything at all, even if it might seem like a ridiculous question or if it's just a thought. If you want to ask, yeah, raise that hand with the icon, and we can answer any questions that you've got. So we're coming to the last part of the session, and I just want to go back to this, the fact that it's an NFT and it also is in play as a physical asset, and the fact that the asset as an NFT can actually live and have its own value without the land behind it. And I just want to touch on that point, because I think that's super important, that you've got the two things happening at the same time that are going to increase in value. And I know, Oyin, you've done a lot of stuff with NFTs, with rewards. Can you talk to us a little bit about the increase and how NFTs are doing and the reaction that people are having to this industry, so that if the land asset wasn't tied to the NFT, how it would still have value anyway?
I can speak about it. I mean, I'm not in the property space specifically, but I can speak about it from a beauty and fashion perspective. So for us at Niyo, what we're building is attaching fractional NFTs to beauty, hair, and fashion items. So where people can actually get physical items, but they also have a digital asset. So obviously with property is different because it's an asset, not necessarily a liability. A lot of beauty, fashion items are actual liabilities when we think about it in a practical sense. But the fact that you can always mint that NFT and then allow for that NFT to continue to outlive the actual fashion item is something that's become popular as we've done a lot of our market research. Our platform isn't live yet, but that certifying stuff that was a liability in the past has been really important. I think another thing actually that might be also quite interesting for the property space is to do with fractionalizing those NFTs. So obviously the current asset is, the current price for this specific property is $1.25 million. But what we wanted to do is to actually increase mass adoption and actually make the space a lot more inclusive, especially if most of our target audience are women who don't necessarily know about the space and don't know the value that it can bring. And so the idea of actually saying, okay, we have one NFT, or in this case, maybe we have one luxury handbag. You can own a fraction of that handbag, and actually a fraction of that handbag could actually, mean that you own a fraction of that asset, but also you can actually lend that handbag for, a few days and then return it back to the supplier and the brand that actually has provided that to you. So that circular economy and that sustainability that's going on within the platform. But could we do the same thing even in the property space when it comes to, I know that we have like Airbnbs at the moment. Can we actually have NFTs attached to rent-to-rent models, or could we have NFTs attached to models when it comes to rent, where a renter or tenant, can have an NFT attached to that, and also as they continue to, as they go through that kind of like cycle, they also have the NFT to say, okay, you know what, I've been here, and I can continue to increase in the value of that. So that's essentially what we've been working on from a beauty perspective, not necessarily from a property perspective, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that relationship ties in.
Absolutely, and see how the future, all these things that you're talking about, the fractionalization, and like Dimitrios, like you were talking about before, having the floor plans tied to the NFT, having the architects, the designs, the renders, everything tied into that same asset. Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about potentially where that could lead us?
Definitely. I'd just like to kick off and say that Dharmesh is very much an advocate and very much understands it. So he's been more devil's advocate than trying to attack anything. I think if anyone spends some time with him, they'll realise he's got a really in-depth knowledge. So I spend a lot of my time with at any one time, I have 10 founders working on different things to solve things. And usually it's around real estate, usually it's around UK property. And I always see it as a kind of, right, okay, we're solving this, but it's quite a small solution. And it might be a great solution, but it will never get adoption because all of a sudden they need £6 million to go to market for everyone to start to think, oh, this is good. It's a can opener. Maybe I'll use one. And the bigger things that we've worked on with some of the companies now exited have been bigger solutions. I mean, one of the early ones we worked on was Your Keys. And the founder there said, look, how can we get things, how can we get a property exchange in 7 days? That was what he wanted to do. He said, there's 216 processes. How do we make that happen? That company exited to Zoopla. And what's quite interesting about that is that now portals are looking, instead of being just places where you have inventory that looks really nice and people can go see it and then they go and come off the platform and come off the portal and talk to the agent. I think portals now are going to start to have useful things for people who want to do property. And I think the point was made by a couple of people this evening where, I mean, when I was an agent in 85, you were the high priest and high priestesses when your agents going to people's properties because they didn't know what the value was. You knew because you'd sold something similar to that and you could say, oh, it's worth £40,500. And I'm going back in time now. Now, all that data's out there. And other phrases that have been used today, and a lot of people are coming from this viewpoint, is the data, it shouldn't be owned by organizations. It belongs to everybody, and that is making the big difference here. In some ways, I'm seeing, we deal with in America a lot of realtors and all the rest of it. In lots of ways, I think the agent, agent only really exists because they are the ones who get the inventory. I think the general public, if they could, would want to do it themselves, but they want to do it in a trusted framework. And that is the big problem, isn't it? It's how do we get this all, I deal with, someone mentioned about digital trust framework, ETIV is Stuart Young, the government reporting to the government, all the rest of it. Everyone says, yes, it needs to be solved. There's 12 different ways they want to solve it. And that's, you get these really bright people in a room and they go, we're going to solve it this way, we're going to solve it that way. And I kind of guess it must be very much like this in this as well. There must be, even in this space, there must be divergent views of how it should be done. But I'm hopeful. I mean, I think this is a big solution to a big problem. What I really think is there needs to be this commonality of language, which there isn't. We've got all these solutions and they're kind of dotted around. It's a bit like rock pools, and there's a big sea over there, and the sea actually would would connect everything. We've got these rock pools, and some of them are pretty good, and you go in there and you can have a little swim around. But where you really want to be is in the sea over there, and no one owns it, but everyone knows it's there, and it's kind of, it washes through everything. So yeah, I think
perfect description of the goal of Web3. That you want this kind of commons where all of this kind of objective data is there, and then folks can find their ways of using that data to make their lives better.
Yeah, and I think some other problems we got. I mean, one of our clients is Koju, and what they're trying to say, well, not trying to say, they say there needs to be an operating system that connects everything via blockchain, so that everyone can still do stuff how they want to do it. You can still use your facts if you want, but we'll have this ability, transparency, and a truth to the property asset. Everyone will know what's happening with it. And the problem is, we did a survey on 400 people. We did 100 solicitors, 100 estate agents, 100 lenders, and 100 brokers. And we said, blockchain, how do you see it? And most of them said, well, we said, could you explain to us what blockchain is? And I would say it's about 13% thought that they could explain it to somebody else. We then said, do you see it as a technology of now? And most people said, oh, within the next 10 years. And then we asked a question, cryptocurrency, do you dabble in it? And the average was around about 65%. So don't do blockchain, but do crypto. So it's a bit like, do you smoke? No, I don't smoke, but I vape. Oh, are you aware that 99% of vapes have tobacco in it, nicotine? No, there's this kind of mismatch So people, and I think that's what happens in this space. I mean, property asset is obviously very much a paper-driven, safe, secure thing. But I do think that lenders would love to be able to do things much more quickly, and a fractional ownership and all the rest of it. I mean, it just opens it all up, doesn't it? I mean, people can invest in it. It would be amazing if it was safe. But I do believe the push is for it to be made safe. So I'm kind of, I get more and more involved in this. A lot of companies I deal with at the moment are in this space, and I'm just going, okay, well, yeah, everyone wants it, but it's got to be easy to understand, risk-free, and the solicitors, quite rightly, like it. And once they accept it, then everyone else will go, well, if the solicitor says it's okay, because that's really how real estate happens in the UK, isn't it? When a property gets bought, the solicitor is the person who carries the can. And the lender says, look, we don't care. If the solicitor wants to buy it in, that's fine, because we're blind to it. We've never been to this property. If he says it's okay or she says it's okay, that's okay by us. So I think that is the common denominator, isn't it? And it seems here you've done a really good job, because you satisfied solicitors who at the end of the day are going to deal with the transfer of the property asset in the end, aren't they? So, I'm encouraged. But I think there's a long way to go. I think there's a lot of people working on it. I know there's a lot of people working on it. So, because obviously whoever has the operating system is going to make a lot of money, aren't they?
Yeah, we're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth noting that Mattereum started in 2017. And, we put 5 years and several $1 million into developing the methodology that we used here, and the technology and the contracting frameworks and all the rest of the stuff that backs it up. And, our role in the ecosystem is basically that we sit in the deal beside the lawyers. We're very, very close to the legal end of the biz. And the idea is to simply sit there and roll property through the system for lots of other companies in the PropTech space. Somebody comes in, they've got a portfolio of properties, they run them through the Mattereum process to get them turned into NFTs, and then they can plug them into the DeFi ecosystem for things like collateralized lending. And I think with the recent hiccups in mortgage lending in the UK, it would not surprise me if it became possible to use DeFi to do mortgage lending within the next 6 months to a year. And at that point, you begin to have a real use case, because if the lenders have cold feet and the interest rates are volatile and everything is messy, the notion that you could actually go out to international capital on a unit-by-unit basis rather than going through things like REITs begins to open up the possibility that you could access the liquidity using cryptocurrency in the blockchain, rather than getting choked off by what's happening with interest rates and banks and the general kind of wobbliness that we see in mainstream TradFi.
Well, I think that's it, though. Everyone realizes all of a sudden the banking system isn't really a system, is it? It's a marketplace. And that's, hence why we are where we are. And those who are older on this call have seen it all before, and we'll see it again. But yeah, I think I've learned an awful lot this evening. It's been great.
Guys,
really,
we're going to start wrapping up. Thank you so much. We're going to start wrapping up, because a few of the speakers had to go, and I just want to ask if there's any more questions from anyone, please raise the hand now. If not, we have got the link to the landing page. You can go on there, you can email everyone that's joined the call, and everyone that didn't join the call will get an email after this, just with the presentation that we went through at the beginning. It's also all been recorded, so it will go online as well for you guys to watch back, or any bits of information that you need to go back over is going to be there for you to look at. Is there any more questions? Yeah, Beatrix, do you want to ask something? Go for it. I've asked to unmute you. Do you want to unmute yourself, Beatrix? And
I did. Thanks. So my question is, that NFT that will be created, let's say it's sold in the future and has gained value, so the price has increased, will that be considered as an investment, and therefore this sale will be regulated?
Vinny, do you want to answer that?
On that, I think I should defer to my legal team.
Ian, do you want to answer that, Ian?
I'm slightly confused as to exactly what the question was. Sorry.
Beatrix, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, my question is, will the NFT be considered as an investment? Because where I'm coming from is that in the US, in the United States, for example, like the NFTs, they are considered to be an investment because the value increases. So they are regulated by the SEC, the SEC, the Security Commission. Therefore, I wanted to understand whether or not in the UK that's the case as well.
There is regulation of crypto assets in the UK, certainly. I can't give that question a simple answer now. I mean, the NFT is effectively a voucher. What's going up in value is the value of the asset rather than the NFT itself. So obviously, things like stamp duty will be payable every time the NFT changes hands. So it's, I'm not 100% certain what the answer is. And I think we would need to do some more research.
Okay.
I think I can untangle that a little. So, obviously anything that involves real estate is going to be regulated. So the transfer of the NFT does involve payment of stamp duty. So in the UK context, the transfer of the NFT, because it represents the transfer of the beneficial interest in the property, that's when the money is changing hands, that's when the stamp duty is paid. So in that sense, it's seen as being a standard real estate transaction, which would imply, generally speaking, one might assume, obviously consult your own lawyers, but if it is, you're paying tax on it as a real estate transaction, the documentation says real estate transaction, all the parties say real estate transaction, it is unlikely that somebody is going to pop up and say, wait, that's a security, right? Now, obviously, if you were to take that property and then somehow split the NFT into shares and then sell the NFT shares, at that point, without any shadow of a doubt, you would be dealing with probably an unregistered security, or maybe you do something like a Reg A or a Reg CF or a Reg D or a Reg, PQ or XYZ, PDF 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. I can't keep track of the American regs, but that is a general sort of an approach. If it's being handled as one way and you're paying tax in it in one way, and everybody in the deal looks at it in that way, it is not immediately likely that it is going to be perceived in a completely different way by a different regulator. But America is very dangerous and very schizophrenic about that stuff. So, you really have to work with American counsel to get to the bottom of that, because America is a minefield.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that
answers
answers my question. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. And we have a summary here. Is everybody familiar with this thing called the Howey test in America? The test for whether something is seen as a security and regulated by the SEC is called the Howey test. The Howey test is quite complicated to apply. We prefer a thing called the Norwegian rule, which is that everything which is enjoyable is either fattening or immoral. So in the case of whether the SEC is interested, if an American feels in their heart that they might make money buying it, the SEC will consider it a security if humanly possible.
Well,
yeah, because the SEC's test is largely about the motivation of the buyer. And then there are certain classes of stuff like commodities or fine art or something like that that are kind of explicitly removed from the SEC's interest, but the SEC is essentially a regulator of desire. It's a crazy, crazy institution. And, it would be nice if they gave us slightly clearer rules to play with, because it is not immediately obvious day to day which way the SEC goes on critical issues.
Thanks so much, Vinny, and thanks, Beatrice, for asking the question. Does anyone else, FDL, do you want to go ahead? Let's ask to unmute.
Yeah, hello guys, hi. First of all, thank you for organizing this. This is fantastic. And still wrapping my head around probably 90% of the concepts that you raised up tonight. So I hope it's not a dumb question, but I'd like to know if the model that you created can be replicated for different asset categories, for example, commercial real estate, and also for something that it is linked to commercial real estate, which is rental of properties.
I think absolutely. Vinny, do you want to talk about the other assets that you've got and how you link them?
Yeah, I mean, this immediately runs into our good old friend, the SEC, right? So, so the short answer is yes. If lawyers can do it on paper, we can figure out how to do it on a blockchain for almost all situations. So, if you think of, here's your paper contract stack, what Mattereum has is a kind of methodology for pulling across the paper contract stack and turning it into something which neatly represents itself as an NFT and can be bought and sold. And our intention is to do that at scale for lots and lots and lots of people, standardize the contract paperwork as much as possible, and then relatively ordinary people doing real estate transactions can do them as NFTs with manageable costs, because you do a lot of volume on that stuff and you get good at doing it efficiently. When we get to commercial real estate, there are a lot of new considerations in the equation here. So if the commercial real estate is, for example, serviced, a set of complexities. If it's things like industrial workspace and you have a whole bunch of questions about things like three-phase power and different insurance regimes and health and safety and zoning and all the rest of that stuff, you get new kinds of
traceability, sustainability, traceability. There is also that part, that
all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So every single one of those things is more paperwork that has to be put through the conversion process to show up on the blockchain as a part of the deal. All of that is legwork of a kind that we know how to do. And if people want to bring us those kind of deals, we will figure out how to do that kind of legwork with them. And then we will be able to do that kind of stuff without it going outside of the existing regulatory frameworks that everyone is operating inside of. When you start talking about the rental stream, things become a little more entertaining. So, if you were going to have a building that has sitting tenants in it and the tenants are currently paying rent, and when you buy the NFT then starts paying the rent to you, this is the part where you begin to want a kind of regulatory fine-tooth comb and some very careful analysis, jurisdiction by jurisdiction by jurisdiction, because that begins to look a little bit more like a financial instrument is being transferred rather than simple ownership of the property. And you have to think about, from the perspective of the tenant, they're now transferring the landlord to something. Somebody else is now their landlord, but maybe the SPV is the landlord and the beneficial ownership has changed to the SPV, but the SPV is still collecting the rent. And, once you begin to have something that has a sitting tenant and a revenue stream, it's going to need a bunch more work. And certainly there could be imaginable circumstances where something along those kind of lines would immediately fail the Howey test. But at that point it just has a slight smell of complexity to it. I couldn't, obviously I don't have an opinion on this, not being a lawyer. Ian, Naranjan, do you have any thoughts about that before I stick my foot any further in my mouth? Okay, that was apparently where Idris.
Thanks so much for your question. Guys, thanks so much to everyone for joining us. We're going to start wrapping up now because obviously it's getting late, and I appreciate that we've been on quite a while and I think we've got some really good value out of the speakers and it's been amazing. Thank you all for joining us, and to Oyin and to Becks as well, who've had to leave. If there are any more very specific questions or anything that you want to unpick with us directly, then get in touch with us via the landing page. So it's www.tokenized-properties.com. I will post a link in here. Get in touch, give us a call or book a call, and we can talk you through how it all works in more detail if there is anything that you don't want to ask right now on the call. But yeah, thanks so much for everyone for joining, and I'm going to start wrapping up and saying goodbye. And as I said, it's all recorded and it's going to be online and able to listen back. So yeah, thank you so much to all the speakers for joining and to everyone that's joined as a guest.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everyone.
Really good call, everyone.
Thank you.
And yeah, do be in touch. We're just getting started with this real estate business, and we're very eager to learn. None of us are real estate natives, and we really want to work in partnership with companies that are doing real estate that have the experience, as Idris's team does. And we think of this as being very much a B2B play because, we can't imagine dealing with large volume consumer stuff. It would drive us around the twist, but, B2B context, bring the projects over, single shared platform, move as much of the real estate industry in the UK as we can onto a blockchain norm. Could be great for everyone.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew, Idris, Vinay, everyone on the call. Thanks for joining. Thanks, guys.